In a distant corner of the universe, the Vortixians, a once peaceful alien species, have begun to experience a disturbing phenomenon. Their children, who should remain in the safety of childhood for hundreds of years, are rapidly evolving into fully grown adults within mere decades. One such child, Zilva, has suffered this cruel fate. Born in a small colony on the moon of Vortia, Zilva's mind and body mature at an unnaturally fast pace, robbing her of innocence and joy. As she grows, so do her inner battles. Her emotions, once simple and pure, now twist into uncontrollable storms. Her accelerated development is not just physical. Her mind is forced to carry the weight of centuries of experience in a fraction of the time. As Zilva confronts her own fragile sanity, she begins to question whether her species' forced evolution is a curse or a hidden blessing. But the more she searches for answers, the more the line between her childhood and adulthood blurs, leading her toward a psychological storm that could destroy everything. Zilva's first memory was of the soft hum of her cradle, the gentle rocking motion that lulled her to sleep in her childhood home. That memory, though faint, seemed distant to her now, faded by the whirlwind of accelerated growth that had taken over her life. At the age of 5, Zilva appeared to be no different than any other child in the Vortixian colony of Vortia. But beneath the surface, something strange was happening. Her body was growing faster than it should, and her mind, once simple and pure, was forced to comprehend and process more knowledge and experience than any child should bear. The first sign of her unnatural evolution came when she passed her 6th month of existence and had already reached the mental and emotional capacity of a 5-year-old. Her parents were proud, but there was an underlying sense of unease. Their daughter was maturing faster than any child in the colony, and no one, not even the leading scientists, could explain why. By her 5th year, Zilva had the language skills and intellectual abilities of someone who had lived for a full decade, leaving her peers baffled and her teachers in awe. But this rapid maturation was a double-edged sword. The Vortixians, a species known for their long lifespans and careful progression, had never encountered such an anomaly. Their children were supposed to remain in their youth for decades, living protected and nurtured until they were ready to assume the responsibilities of adulthood. But Zilva was not given this time. She was growing faster than nature intended, her body rapidly developing, her mind stretched too thin with knowledge she had no way of processing. Emotions once simplistic and pure now became overwhelming torrents, each one more complex and intense than any child should experience. By the time she reached her 10th year, Zilva had already reached physical and emotional maturity far beyond her age. Her once innocent gaze was replaced with the depth of an adult, but the experiences of childhood, the carefree days of play and laughter, had been stolen from her. The other children in the colony, moving through the streets with carefree innocence, were strangers to her. Her understanding of the world was growing increasingly fragmented. She felt as though she was becoming a prisoner of her own accelerated mind. It wasn't just her physical appearance that had changed, the way she perceived the world had altered. What should have been a time for discovery and wonder had become a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Her thoughts were clouded with doubts and existential questions. Why was she different? Why was her body and mind developing so rapidly? Her once vibrant imagination, which once danced with playful ideas, now seemed tethered to the heavy weight of adult responsibilities. Each day felt like an endless, unrelenting march toward something she didn't understand. Zilva was no longer a child, but neither was she truly an adult. She was caught between worlds, struggling to comprehend the weight of her own evolution. And the more she matured, the more she realized that the world around her, and the people in it, would never truly understand what she was going through. She felt more alone than ever before. By the time Zilva reached her 12th year, the toll of her rapid evolution had begun to take its psychological toll. Her body had matured, but her mind was still a battlefield. The sharp clarity of adulthood coexisted with the fleeting remnants of childhood, creating a fractured existence where every emotion, every thought felt like it belonged to someone else. The Vortixians had long valued emotional control and mental clarity. The society they had built was one of stoicism, where emotions were something to be controlled, not expressed. But Zilva had no choice. Her feelings were raw and untamed, amplified by the pressure of an intelligence that had expanded far beyond her ability to process it. Her intellect had advanced at an unnatural pace, but her emotional maturity lagged far behind. Fear, sadness, joy, and anger, all of them surged within her like untamable forces, crashing against the walls of her mind. The first signs of the strain appeared in her dreams. They were vivid, nightmarish visions of an alien world that felt both familiar and foreign. Shadows danced just out of reach. Whispers of things she couldn't quite understand filled her ears. In these dreams, she was older, always older than her years, burdened with knowledge and responsibility. And yet, in these dreams, she was also a child, lost and confused, trying to make sense of the overwhelming emotions that consumed her. When Zilva awoke, her thoughts lingered on the dream's edges, but it wasn't just the dreams that disturbed her, it was the constant barrage of fragmented emotions. The simplest task, once so easy for a child, became an exercise in mental and emotional endurance. Her attempts to interact with the other children in the colony became strained. She didn't belong in their world anymore, but neither could she relate to the adults. Her heart, too mature for the innocence of childhood but not yet seasoned enough for the complexities of adulthood, ached with a loneliness she couldn't name. At times, Zilva felt as if she were living outside of herself, watching her own actions from a distance. She would smile at someone, but her mind would ask, "Why am I doing this? What do I feel?" The emotions that once had a natural flow now seemed like waves crashing into a dam, forcing their way through the cracks in her consciousness. One moment, she was angry, the next, she was deeply sad, and then, inexplicably, a sense of joy would emerge, only for it to slip away before she could grasp it. Her parents, concerned but unable to understand what she was going through, tried their best to help her. They consulted with the Vortixian scholars, but no one could offer an explanation. None of the old remedies seemed to work, and Zilva's mind continued to strain under the weight of its own development. It was as if her mind had become too large for her body. The intellectual maturity she had gained came with the price of a fragmented emotional world, and Zilva began to question if this rapid evolution was truly a gift, or a curse that would break her before she could even understand it. By her 15th year, Zilva's internal turmoil had become unbearable. The rapid acceleration of her physical and mental growth had pushed her to the brink of a psychological collapse. What should have been a time of discovery and exploration was now dominated by chaos, an emotional storm she could not control. Her mind, capable of processing vast amounts of information, was constantly at odds with her heart, which had become a battleground of emotions she wasn't equipped to understand. One afternoon, as Zilva walked through the colony's streets, the vibrant sunlight bathed the glass structures and green spaces in warm light, but she barely noticed it. The sounds of laughter from children, once a comforting backdrop to her life, now felt like a painful reminder of everything she had lost. She no longer belonged in their world. The innocence of childhood, something so simple, so pure, had been stolen from her by her rapid maturation. And the wisdom she had gained was too much for her young mind to handle. It was as if every emotion she experienced was amplified 1,000 times, spinning out of control in a relentless flood. The simplest of interactions became overwhelming. A brief conversation with a fellow Vortixian, once easy and enjoyable, now felt like an emotional weight she couldn't bear. Her heart raced, her thoughts became fragmented, and her hands would tremble as she tried to maintain the illusion of normalcy. A sense of dread followed her everywhere, a constant companion that gnawed at her from within. She would lash out in frustration one moment, then retreat into a deep sadness the next, unsure of why the world seemed so difficult to navigate. Her parents, who had once been her anchors, no longer knew how to help her. They could see the toll her rapid evolution had taken, but their understanding of the Vortixian experience, of what it meant to grow up at a natural pace, was limited. Their attempts to comfort her were met with resistance, as Zilva's mind was no longer content with simple solutions. She couldn't explain the turmoil inside her, nor could they understand the pressure she felt. The more they tried to help, the more she pushed them away, feeling like a stranger in her own family. The emotional storms inside her grew more violent. One night, Zilva found herself in the quiet of her room, trembling with an intensity she couldn't control. Fear, grief, anger, and even fleeting moments of joy, each emotion collided within her like a storm, too fierce to contain. She screamed out in frustration, her voice echoing through the empty walls, desperate for some kind of release. But there was no answer, no comfort, just the overwhelming rush of emotions that threatened to drown her. Zilva had no answers. She only had the chaos inside her, an emotional hurricane that would not let her go. As the storm raged on, she began to question her very existence. Was this who she was now? A child lost to a mind that had grown too fast, too soon? The future she had once imagined seemed distant, unreachable, and filled with an unbearable weight. The storm was not just in her heart, it had consumed every part of her. She was trapped in a world she couldn't control, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could survive it. Zilva could no longer ignore the storm inside her. Every day, it grew worse, the overwhelming emotional chaos, the fragmented thoughts, the unbearable weight of wisdom she was never meant to possess. She had to find answers. If her rapid evolution was not a gift, then it was a curse, one she could no longer endure. But what caused this unnatural growth? Why were only a few children affected by this strange affliction, and what did it mean for the future of her species? With determination fueling her every step, Zilva sought out the elders, the wisest and most respected members of the Vortixian Council. They were the only ones who could offer any insight into the phenomenon that had ravaged her life. She had avoided them for years, too afraid of their judgments and their inability to understand her plight. But now, desperation drove her. She had to know the truth, even if it shattered everything she had ever known. The elders' chambers were a sanctuary of ancient knowledge, filled with relics and data from a time long past. Zilva walked through the corridors, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her. These were the minds who had shaped the course of her people's existence, the ones who had guided them through centuries of progress. They had always placed intellect above all else, believing that emotional control was the key to their civilization's greatness. But now, as Zilva approached the council, she realized that their wisdom might have led them down a dark path. Zilva, Elder Taran spoke first, his voice soft but firm. We have been waiting for you. You have questions. We understand. Zilva nodded, swallowing the lump that had formed in her throat. Why is this happening to me? Why do I age faster than the other children? My mind, it's too much. It's too fast. It's breaking me apart. Why? The elders exchanged solemn glances. You are not the first, Elder Taran continued. The Vortixians have always been on the cusp of something greater. Our intellects have evolved, as has our civilization. But not all growth is natural. Zilva's heart pounded. What does that mean? What is happening to me? It began long ago, Elder Taran explained. There was an experiment, one we attempted to manipulate the natural course of our species' evolution. A project to accelerate mental development, to push us beyond the limits of time and space. But it wasn't meant to be. We unknowingly triggered an imbalance. The acceleration of intellect without emotional maturity created a rift, a fracture in the psyche of those affected. Zilva's stomach dropped. So, this is my fault? The way I am? This curse? No, Elder Taran said softly. It is not your fault. You are a result of our mistake. And now you must confront it. This emotional imbalance, this storm inside you, is the key. The answer lies in integrating both intellect and emotion. We have failed to teach you how. Zilva stood still, the weight of the truth settling heavily upon her. Her evolution had been forced upon her, a consequence of a reckless desire for progress. The rapid development of her mind was not a natural progression, but a destructive force that had fractured her very being. Now, the path to healing was clear, but terrifying. She needed to learn how to bridge the chasm between intellect and emotion, to integrate them, to become whole again. The storm inside her had only just begun. But now, Zilva had the first piece of the puzzle. And with it, a new purpose. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was the only way forward. She would have to face the storm, not as a curse, but as a challenge to find balance within herself and, perhaps, save her people from the consequences of their own ambition. The truth was both a burden and a revelation. Zilva had learned what had caused her torment: the experiment, the imbalance between intellect and emotion, the unintended consequences of Vortixian ambition. The elders had given her the key to understanding her existence, but it was no simple solution. The storm of emotion she had been battling was not just a byproduct of her rapid development, it was a direct result of the fracture between her mind and heart, a fracture that her people had long ignored. Now, with the knowledge of what had happened, Zilva was faced with a terrifying question. Could she repair the damage done by her own species? Could she embrace her emotions, and by doing so, finally heal the rift within herself? The storm inside her, once an uncontrollable force, was now a challenge, a reckoning. She had to reconcile the logical, intellectual side of herself with the raw, turbulent emotions that had consumed her. It was the only way forward, not just for her, but for the future of the Vortixians. Zilva began her journey toward healing alone. Each day, she worked to connect with the emotions that had once seemed so alien to her. She allowed herself to feel the simple joys she had longed for as a child, the peace of an untroubled mind, the warmth of a close bond with others. It wasn't easy. Her mind, so accustomed to intellect and logic, resisted the rawness of her feelings. Every step forward felt like a struggle, like wading through a storm that she couldn't fully control. But with each passing day, the emotional chaos began to settle. Slowly, the storm within her grew quieter, and for the first time, she felt the faint stirrings of peace. But the true test would come before the Vortixian Council. As Zilva stood before the elders once again, she could feel the weight of their gazes on her, their expectations heavy in the air. They had been the architects of her pain, yet now they were her only hope. She had learned to balance her emotions, but could they do the same? Could they allow their people to face the consequences of their mistake and embrace a new path, one where emotion and intellect existed in harmony? Zilva, Elder Taran said, his voice grave, you have shown us what we could not see. You have learned to balance intellect and emotion, to heal the rift within yourself. But the question remains, can we, as a people, do the same? The room was silent as Zilva met their gazes. For the first time, she felt a deep connection to the elders, a shared understanding of the immense challenge ahead. The path they would take from here was uncertain, but Zilva knew that it was the only one that would save her people. The storm within her had subsided, but it was clear. This was only the beginning. We must embrace the storm, Zilva said, her voice steady and strong. Only then can we truly evolve, together. The elders nodded, their expressions filled with both uncertainty and hope. The reckoning had arrived, and the future of the Vortixians would depend on whether they could find balance between mind and heart. Zilva had found her way. Now, it was time for them all to begin the journey.